Hey everyone, Tankenstein here. In this video, I'll be reviewing the FFA P-16. I'll probably just refer to it as the P-16 throughout this review. This is a currently 9.0 BR Rank 6 premium jet fighter in the German Air Force's tech tree, though of course flies under the Swiss flag. The pack that it comes in currently costs $59.99 USD when not on sale, and comes with 2,000 Golden Eagles and 15 days of premium time. With that said, in this video, I'll be going over everything that you need to know about this fighter, including its stats, how it plays, go over its strengths and weaknesses, I'll give it some scores in several key areas, and then I'll give my final recommendation, and if I feel if this vehicle is worth purchasing or not. With that said, if you don't mind, please consider subscribing to my channel, but without further ado, let's get into the review. Now to start, I'll place its stat card here on the side of the screen. Important things to note are its top speed, its armament, and its rate of climb. Now for how it plays. The P-16 is a subsonic fighter at a BR where supersonic fighters are becoming more common. As such, you would think it would rely on things like maneuverability in order to stay relevant. While this plane is somewhat maneuverable, it bleeds energy so quickly that its turns cannot be sustained for long without losing most of your speed. Because of this, there are two kinds of ways that you can play this aircraft in air battles. In a down tier, the P-16 can do fairly well as a boom and zoomer, as it has a fairly good rate of climb and overall speed. It can also fly low and attack slower enemies like A4s as they appear. Alternatively, in up tiers, you pretty much have to hug the ground, as high altitude will be dominated with aircraft that have rudimentary radar-guided missiles, high speed, or more likely, both. In these up tiers, which are unfortunately very common, you'll need to hug the ground and basically act like a scavenger, picking off distracted or damaged enemies, as the speed and armament of the P-16 is largely insufficient to be able to deal with higher BR enemies with consistency. This is because basically you have two 30mm cannons and two AIM-9Bs, both of which are a little bit lacking insofar as their effectiveness against typically higher BR and faster enemies. The difference between up tiers and down tiers, I feel, is a huge thing that you'll notice when playing the P-16. This plane is good or even very good in down tiers, but definitely is not good in up tiers. While some aircraft can use superb mobility to even the odds in up tiers by making faster enemies fight to your strengths, the P-16 just doesn't have that great of maneuverability. It's good, but it loses energy very quickly, and it isn't ever going to be the best in any given match. In up tiers, the P-16 will be outclassed in terms of speed, missiles, acceleration, rate of climb, technology like radars and radar-guided sights, weapons, and even likely maneuverability. Unlike something like the Shenyang F5 that can be good if you play it right, the P-16 doesn't really have any one thing that's great at least not at its current BR. In down tiers, it can do very well, as it's basically a powerful subsonic aircraft that is more powerful than the lower BR subsonic aircraft with similar or lesser weapons and technology. Because of how War Thunder is as currently structured, and due to the current BR of the P-16, it will constantly be placed into up tiers without having the ability to be better in one way or another compared to its likely foes. In regards to base bombing, this plane can do it, but it's not fast enough, nor does it currently have an air spawn, which means that I would only bomb bases once the enemy is largely wiped out and I can change my loadout back at base. It can do this job fairly well, destroying a full base and damaging another with its loadout, but it will be a sitting duck in any configuration outside of carrying its base AIM-9Bs, of which are mediocre regardless of if you're in an up tier or a down tier. Now for close air support, the P-16 is surprisingly good. It is currently labeled as a jet fighter in War Thunder, though it would be more accurate to call this vehicle a strike aircraft. With the ability to carry up to 3,000 kilograms of total ordnance, including two 2,000-pound bombs, 44 SNEBs and a retractable tray underneath the fuselage, and a whole host of smaller bombs and HE/heat rockets, the P-16 can actually do quite a bit of damage. I personally find that maximizing the bomb load and equipping the SNEBs is the most useful loadout, and will almost always net me a few kills per outing. Additionally, the rocket tray underneath the fuselage fires the SNEBs like a rocket shotgun, which is absolutely fantastic and is possibly the most effective way to use such rockets, at least without a ballistics computer. Regardless, being that the P-16 again lacks ballistics computers of any kind, you need to have at least some level of skill and familiarity with CAS to have success with this plane. But with the diverse loadout options and relatively high ordnance weight, the P-16 is much better than I think most people would think it is, enemies, outside of the fact that it has HEIT shells for the 30mm cannons that are currently the only equipable shells for it, and they do minimal damage in strafing runs. This vehicle is not an A4 by any means, but the P-16 still gets the job done with the ability to switch into an air cover role once you're done making fools of enemy ground forces. Now with that said, let's get into its strengths and weaknesses, and first for its strengths. Relative to subsonic aircraft, the P-16 is fairly quick to accelerate and has a good top speed, as well as a good rate of climb. Again, relative to subsonic aircraft. Second, it has two fairly powerful 30mm Hispano cannons. As of the recording of this video, they are also incredibly accurate. For its third strength, while they aren't any good, the P-16 still has two AIM-9Bs, which is something that not all planes have at this BR. Fourth, overall, this vehicle has a good roll rate. For its fifth strength, it has excellent ground attack loadouts, including two 2,000-pound bombs, four 400kg bombs, 200kg bombs, napalm bombs, and a whole bunch of different T-80 rockets. It even has an extremely fun and useful SNEB rocket tray underneath the fuselage that essentially acts like a rocket shotgun. Beyond this, at least for the most part, this vehicle has good maneuverability. And finally, the P-16 features premium RP and SL bonuses. Now for its weaknesses. Not that it matters that much at this BR, but the P-16 lacks a radar. Second, though they aren't too common at this BR, the P-16 also lacks ballistic computers for both bombs and rockets, which would be nice considering the large anti-ground loadout. Third, this vehicle has wingtip fuel tanks that can burn if hit, or they could just rip off the entire wing with it. Fourth, the energy retention on the P-16 is terrible. For its fifth weakness, the acceleration compared to supersonic planes is mediocre. Beyond this, the AIM-9Bs are bottom tier as far as missiles go. They have poor tracking, poor speed, poor maneuverability, and limited rocket burn time. Having only two of them will oftentimes not lead to a single kill throughout their use. And finally, the cannons, at least currently, have no selectable ammo belts. This limits their use in strafing, as they are currently only HEIT with barely any armor pen. Also, they sometimes don't do much damage, even against small and light aircraft, which is odd, considering that each shell currently has 64 grams of explosive filler equivalent, which is a hell of a lot for any aircraft cannon shell. Now with that said, let's get into how I score this vehicle. And first, for dogfighting and ARB, I give the P-16 a 4.75 out of 10. The FFA P-16 is, as of current, just about average in terms of dogfighting and ARB when considering everything regarding it. Its problem is that it doesn't do any one thing particularly well and is constantly in up tiers. If it went down to 8.7 BR, which I could easily see happening, then I could see the P-16 jumping to a 5.5 out of 10 in this category. Not great, but still on the good side of average. But that's a big if. Currently, this aircraft is just okay and will do fairly well in down tiers, but will be totally outclassed in up tiers. It has good cannons, but it only has two of them. It has missiles, but they're about as bad as you can get in War Thunder, and again, it only has two of them. It has decent speed, but the planes that it will face will routinely be faster than it. The P-16 is just average in so many ways, and as such, doesn't really have a reliable way to defeat enemies outside of taking them by surprise, at least in an up tier. Now for close air support, I give it a 6.25 out of 10. How odd is it that the P-16 is a surprisingly good CAS aircraft? Between its great rocket tray underneath the fuselage, heavy bomb load, ability to carry up to 3,000 kilograms of ordnance, and a whole slate of effective rockets that it can carry under its wings, the P-16 can actually perform quite well in this role. Sure, it lacks ballistic computers entirely, but aiming it is surprisingly easy with most ordnance options, especially the SNEBs. Besides, ballistic computers aren't really common at this BR. The only real negatives are that the P-16 lacks any sort of rudimentary guided missiles, and its cannon shells are, as of current, all HE shells, which do minimal damage to most if not all ground vehicles at this BR, and can really only be used for the most part to track enemies. Now with all that said, I give this vehicle a 5.25 out of 10 overall. While I personally like the P-16 for its historical value, I don't really think it's that good in War Thunder. I don't think it's bad either, but it has no ability to consistently compete in up tiers that it will constantly be foisted into. Also, the fact that the P-16 is currently listed as a fighter when it does better as a CAS aircraft is a bit funny to me, but I guess that's largely just semantics. Maybe it'll change in the future. Also, I know the overall score is below the exact average of the two aforementioned scores, but I typically weigh dogfighting a bit more heavily than CAS, which is what I did here. Regardless, as much as I would love to praise the P-16, as it's a Swedish prototype that War Thunder added and not a copy-paste vehicle of any kind, I simply cannot look past its many faults. Sure, overall, it's a pretty decent aircraft, but its current 9.0 BR is a killer. If it dropped to 8.7, which I could definitely see happening, I would see the P-16 hitting a 5.75 or even a 6 out of 10 overall, which ain't bad at all. Now with that said, do I recommend the FFA P-16 for purchase? In its current state and at its current BR? Not unless you need a good CIS aircraft, again, for this BR. As stated before, the P-16 is decent, but does nothing exceptionally well outside of carrying lots of ordnance. That's pretty much it, and even then, it's not truly breathtaking in how much it can carry. It can have good maneuverability, but it bleeds speed quickly. It doesn't have the engine to gain it back fast enough to be able to win in a lot of turning fights. The missiles just aren't great, and while they will get kills, those kills won't be too common. The lower BR G91R4, which is also a German premium that I coincidentally have a review for that I'll try to link below if I remember, has up to 4 AIM-9Bs, 4 manually guided ATGMs, and really only suffers in terms of overall ordnance weight, a bit on performance compared to the P-16, and the fact that it has 450 cals over 2 30mm cannons, though some people might prefer those 50 cals over these cannons. Comparisons aside, the P-16 is just not that good at 9.0 BR. If it sees a BR decrease to 8.7, then I could see it being a bit more worth it. Maybe. I would probably still recommend the G91R4 for most people over the P-16, even if the P-16 sees a BR decrease. The only people, again, that I would say this plane might be useful for are those that like lots of dumb ordnance and need a good CAS aircraft. Otherwise, if you're handy with manually guided ATGMs, the G91R4 is better all the way. Outside of the fact that it is a lower rank than the P-16, thus it's able to grind through less of the tech tree without receiving RP penalties. Because of the aforementioned faults of the FFA P-16 and the fact that the G91R4 is arguably better than it while also being at a lower BR, I cannot recommend the FFA P-16 for purchase or give it my Tankenstein seal of approval. It's a shame too, because this is one of the rare totally unique premium vehicles that has come to War Thunder in recent years, and it just isn't anything special in game. Now with that said, thanks so much for watching. If you don't mind, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing, as all of those go such a long way to building my channel. But either way, thanks again. I'll see you all on the other side. Take care, everyone.